Prince Harry was born into unimaginable wealth. As spare to the heir, he would never inherit the throne, but he was always destined to inherit fortune that would sustain him and his descendants for generations. Royal trusts, property portfolios, investment funds carefully managed across centuries, assets worth tens of millions that Harry assumed would be his regardless of what choices he made or which family relationships he destroyed. That financial security was his birthright, the compensation for being second son who would never be king. But according to palace lawyers who are now breaking their silence, Harry's inheritance rights were never as secure as he believed. And the choices he made after leaving royal life have allegedly triggered legal mechanisms that systematically strip him of access to wealth he assumed was guaranteed by his royal birth. Want to know what palace legal sources are revealing about Harry's inheritance crisis? Insiders claim that royal trusts contain clauses Harry apparently never read or understood that allow trustees to exclude family members who damage the institution or fail to fulfill royal duties, that King Charles has allegedly invoked those clauses to cut Harry out of future inheritance distributions that were supposed to fund his life and his children's futures. And according to sources familiar with the legal documentation, Harry cannot fight this decision because he signed agreements when he left that gave the palace complete discretion over his inheritance access. This is not about punishment. Palace lawyers suggest this is about protecting royal assets from someone who publicly attacks the institution while expecting to benefit financially from that same institution indefinitely. And Harry, according to insiders, is furious because losing his inheritance means losing the financial safety net that made his California independence possible. To understand how Harry lost his inheritance rights, you need to go back to the legal structures that govern royal wealth distribution. Long before Harry left, long before his memoir attacks, the monarchy created complex trust systems designed to protect assets across generations. But here's what most people don't know. According to sources familiar with royal estate law, these trusts are not simple inheritance where children automatically receive equal shares. They allegedly contain conditions about maintaining family loyalty, serving the institution, and avoiding public scandal that damages the crown. Word from palace legal circles suggests that trustees, typically senior royals and trusted advisors, have discretionary power to alter distributions based on beneficiaries' behaviour and circumstances. People familiar with how these trusts operate describe mechanisms specifically designed to prevent royal family members from attacking the institution while still benefiting from its wealth. And according to insiders, those mechanisms include clauses that allow complete exclusion of beneficiaries whose actions are deemed harmful to the monarchy's interests or reputation. Those close to the legal framework claim Harry was aware these conditions existed, but allegedly never imagined they would be enforced against him. That he apparently believed his status as King Charles's son meant his inheritance was protected regardless of what he said or did publicly. But according to palace lawyers, Harry fundamentally misunderstood that royal inheritance is not automatic entitlement but conditional benefit that requires loyalty and discretion he has spectacularly failed to demonstrate. Sources suggest the trusts contain explicit language about members who write tell-all books, give damaging interviews, or publicly criticise the family being ineligible for future distributions. And Harry, insiders claim, has violated virtually every condition that trustees are required to consider when determining who receives what from royal estates. People familiar with the legal review describe trustees who allegedly met repeatedly to assess whether Harry's behaviour warranted exclusion. And according to sources, the decision was unanimous that someone who attacks the institution in memoirs and interviews while demanding financial support from that same institution cannot reasonably expect to inherit wealth built by the family he rejects. This is where the story shifts from legal technicality to personal betrayal that devastated Harry's financial planning. So when did Harry learn he was being cut out of his inheritance? According to sources close to the situation, the notification came through formal legal letter delivered by palace solicitors. Want to know what that letter allegedly revealed? Insiders claim it informed Harry that trustees had exercised their discretion to exclude him from several major trusts he assumed would eventually distribute substantial wealth to him, not his children necessarily. But Harry personally would allegedly receive nothing from estates that were supposed to be his financial foundation. And according to people familiar with Harry's reaction, he was shocked because he apparently believed inheritance was his regardless of his relationship with the family or his public attacks on the institution. Word from sources suggests Harry immediately demanded meeting with King Charles to contest the decision, but according to palace insiders, Charles reportedly told him the choice was made by trustees, not Charles personally, and reflected Harry's own actions rather than family vindictiveness. And here's what allegedly cut deepest for Harry. Sources claim he discovered the inheritance exclusion applied retroactively to distributions he thought he had already been promised. That money he was counting on for his California lifestyle would never materialize. That trust set up by the Queen Mother and other ancestors specifically excluded him based on his memoir and interview attacks on the family. According to insiders, Harry confronted Charles about whether this was punishment for leaving royal life or revenge for speaking his truth, and Charles reportedly responded that it was neither. It was simply trustees fulfilling their legal obligation to protect royal assets from family members whose public behaviour contradicts the institution's interests. People close to Harry claim he feels this is ultimate betrayal by his family, that they are using money to punish him for being honest about his experiences. But according to palace legal sources, Harry has no one to blame but himself for violating conditions he agreed to when he benefited from royal resources throughout his life. As news of Harry's inheritance loss spread through palace circles, reactions revealed how differently various parties view the legal exclusion. How did senior royals respond when trustees cut Harry out of inheritance trusts? Inside Buckingham Palace, sources say there was quiet satisfaction among advisors who believed Harry should not profit from institution he publicly destroys. These are voices who allegedly argued for years that allowing Harry to attack the family while collecting royal inheritance sent message that disloyalty has no consequences. And according to palace insiders, they view the trustees' decision as appropriate accountability that protects the institution's financial interests from someone who actively works against those interests. Prince William's reaction is allegedly more complex and emotionally conflicted. Word from those close to the Prince of Wales suggests William understands the legal justification for excluding Harry, but grieves the finality of severing financial ties. He reportedly recognises that inheritance was the last connection that might eventually bring Harry back to family fold. But according to sources, William also believes Harry made conscious choice to prioritise California independence over family loyalty and must live with financial consequences of that choice. Insiders claim William has not advocated for reversing the trustees' decision because doing so would undermine legitimate legal process and reward behaviour that has damaged the monarchy. Meanwhile, King Charles's position is reportedly the most painful. Sources close to the monarch suggest Charles wants to provide for his son financially, but knows that doing so while Harry attacks the institution would make Charles complicit in funding his own family's destruction. According to insiders, Charles allegedly tried to warn Harry that memoir and interviews would have financial consequences beyond relationship damage, but Harry reportedly dismissed those warnings as attempts to silence him. Now, sources claim Charles feels vindicated that trustees independently reached same conclusion he privately held about Harry's inheritance eligibility. And in California, word from people familiar with the Sussex's reaction suggests Meghan is furious that Harry's family is cutting off money she apparently assumed would always be available. According to insiders, she allegedly views the inheritance loss as confirmation that royal family was never going to accept her and always planned to punish Harry financially for choosing her over them. But here's what most people don't know. What other financial losses has Harry suffered beyond inheritance exclusion that sources are now revealing? The revelations paint a picture of systematic financial isolation that extends far beyond single trust decision. The first loss involves property access. According to sources familiar with royal estate holdings, Harry allegedly assumed he would eventually have use of royal properties for his family when visiting Britain. But insiders claim that access has been revoked based on his non-working royal status and his public attacks on the family. He will not inherit property rights or residence privileges he thought were his birthright. The second loss is more immediate. Multiple sources claim Harry has been cut off from certain investment funds that provided quarterly or annual distributions to family members. According to people familiar with royal financial structures, these funds allegedly paid out to Harry for years, even after he left. But trustees have reportedly stopped those payments based on his continued public criticism of the institution, and Harry, insiders suggest, was apparently relying on that passive income to supplement his Netflix and book money. The third loss involves future wealth from King Charles's personal fortune. Word from palace sources suggests Charles has allegedly revised his will to minimise Harry's inheritance from the king's personal assets separate from royal trusts. According to insiders, Charles still provides some inheritance for Harry's children, but has drastically reduced what Harry personally would receive upon Charles's death. And the fourth loss is what allegedly devastates Harry most completely: Sources claim he has lost access to royal legal and financial advisors who managed his wealth and investments for free as family courtesy. According to people familiar with the situation, Harry now must pay full commercial rates for wealth management, legal counsel, and tax advice that the royal household previously provided at no cost. And those fees, insiders suggest, eat into his California income faster than he anticipated when he assumed he could still access royal services after leaving royal duties. To understand how Harry ended up in this inheritance crisis without legal protection, you need to understand the advisors who failed to prepare him. So who should have warned Harry that attacking the family would cost him his inheritance? The first figure, according to sources, was the lawyer who handled Harry's exit negotiations from royal life. Insiders familiar with those discussions claim proper legal counsel would have explicitly outlined how memoir and interviews could trigger trust exclusion clauses. But people close to Harry's legal team suggest he may have been so focused on immediate exit terms that he allegedly ignored warnings about long-term financial consequences of public attacks on family. And according to sources, those lawyers may not have emphasized strongly enough that royal inheritance is discretionary privilege rather than guaranteed entitlement. The second advisor who allegedly failed Harry was someone in his California circle who encouraged memoir honesty without explaining financial costs. Word from publishing sources suggests Harry was told that brutal honesty about family would be cathartic and commercially successful, but according to insiders, no one apparently explained that inheritance trustees would view that same honesty as disqualifying behavior that violates trust conditions. And Harry, sources claim, proceeded with memoir content that allegedly triggered every exclusion clause his advisors should have protected him from violating. The third enabling figure was reportedly Meghan herself in terms of understanding inheritance realities. According to people familiar with royal financial structures, Meghan allegedly assumed Harry's inheritance was guaranteed and encouraged him to speak freely without considering financial consequences. But sources suggest she did not understand that royal wealth comes with loyalty requirements that Harry violated through his public attacks. And now, insiders claim, both Harry and Meghan face reality that California lifestyle cannot be sustained on their actual income without royal inheritance they assumed would always supplement their earnings. What makes palace lawyers truly powerful now is the documentation they possess, proving Harry was warned about inheritance consequences. Want to know what legal records exist showing Harry understood the risks he was taking? According to sources familiar with palace legal files, lawyers have Harry's signatures on documents acknowledging trust conditions and exclusion clauses. They allegedly have emails warning him that public attacks on family could jeopardize inheritance rights. And they have correspondence where Harry was explicitly told that memoir admissions and interview accusations would be reviewed by trustees for compatibility with beneficiary eligibility requirements. Word from palace legal circles suggests this documentation exists specifically to prevent Harry from claiming he was never warned or did not understand the consequences. Sources indicate that every time Harry considered going public with family grievances, palace lawyers allegedly reminded him in writing that such actions could cost him financially through trust exclusions. And Harry, according to insiders, proceeded anyway because he apparently believed his status as Charles's son meant inheritance was protected regardless of trustee discretion. People familiar with the legal vault claim palace lawyers are not interested in publicly shaming Harry with this documentation. But sources suggest if Harry challenges the inheritance decision legally or publicly claims he was ambushed, the palace possesses comprehensive proof that he was warned repeatedly and chose to ignore those warnings in favor of public attacks that enriched him through book sales while costing him infinitely more through inheritance losses he can never recover. And now we reach the final truth about what happens when you assume royal status protects you from consequences of attacking the institution that funds that status. How does a prince survive losing inheritance wealth he counted on for his children's futures? Harry stands in California, reportedly furious about trustees' decision but powerless to reverse it. According to sources, he has three impossible options before him. Accept the financial loss and find new income sources to replace inheritance he will never receive. Attempt legal challenge that would publicly expose how much wealth he lost and why trustees excluded him. Or reconcile with family and hope that restoring relationships might eventually restore inheritance access. Word from insiders suggests Harry cannot easily choose any path without admitting massive miscalculation. Accepting loss means acknowledging California independence requires income his actual work cannot generate. Fighting legally exposes his financial vulnerability publicly. Reconciling requires admitting his memoir and interviews cost him more than they gained. Those familiar with his position claim Harry believed being Charles's son meant money would always flow regardless of behaviour. That inheritance was birthright no family dispute could eliminate. And now, according to sources, he must face reality that royal wealth requires royal loyalty, and attacking the institution means forfeiting the financial benefits that institution provides. The legal files exist proving Harry was warned. The trust clauses authorise his exclusion, and palace lawyers stand ready to demonstrate that Harry chose memoir profits over inheritance wealth and must live with consequences of valuing temporary book sales over permanent financial security, his royal birth once guaranteed, but his royal betrayal permanently destroyed. Subscribe to Royal Unfiltered for more such royal news daily. Thanks for watching.